Welcome back, ink drinkers. Welcome to our bonus episode for Project Hail Mary. Today we're going to dive into a discussion over book versus movie, the adaptation of Project Hail Mary as a movie, because it just came out recently. And so we wanted to really discuss, as book lovers, um, it's one of those things that you get kind of like, on the edge of your seat. Are they going to do it well enough? What kind of things are they going to change or leave out? Are they going to adapt it the way that you kind of imagined it as you were reading along? So we're going to kind of dive into our thoughts and reactions to the adaptation that came out recently.
And I don't know about you guys. One of the reasons that we picked up, like my husband and I picked up Project Hail Mary, is we heard the movie was coming out and we were like, oh, we want to make sure we read the book before we see the movie
Mm-hmm.
because usually the book is better and the source material is better. So that also factored into our decision to even do this as a podcast
Mm-hmm.
book. We were like, oh, this is very popular right now. The movie's coming out. We read the material and loved it, and we thought, oh, this would be a great idea. Also, to get to do some type of comparison.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll jump right into it. Why not? We start off where we do in the book
Yeah.
with Rylan waking up, and this movie stars Ryan Gosling,
Mm-hmm.
big A-list actor, and he is one thing I kind of appreciated about the movie that I didn't think of while I was reading the book is
Mm-hmm.
like they have him with a long beard
Yeah.
and long
Long
hair,
hair.
and obviously like he wouldn't have cut his hair in the whole time they were in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't really think about that when reading, and I
Mm-hmm.
liked that they portrayed it that
Yeah.
way. However, I did not like that he was in a sealed bag.
Yeah, I thought that was a little weird. I was like, body bag coma? What's happening?
Especially like how did the arms get to him and things like that? Like
Yeah.
that is not how I picture. Well, I pictured the ship differently too,
Yes, I
but
did.
um like when he said there were three beds, I pictured them like one, two, three, like in a triangle, not like
Yeah,
stacked.
different. Yeah.
And so like you see this body bag with something in it and you
Mhm.
realize there's a human and then he like unzips it or it's
It's
unzipped
zipped because the
somehow.
eye movement was detected.
And we get that with
Yeah.
the book, like the book says, like eye movement detected. What's
Mhm.
two
Two
plus
us two.
two? But things seem to escalate quickly
Yeah.
from there.
Things moved really fast in the movie, and I get that for like pacing of a movie. You can't spend necessarily as much time as we did in the book, but I felt like everything moved like extremely fast. He didn't have to do a lot of like flashbacks and discovering the way that he did in the book with the movie because like he was able to quickly climb through portions of the ship. He got to
Yeah.
see outside right away that he was in space. He got into the control room without having
Mhm.
to know what his
His
name
name was?
was. Like, just all of
Yeah.
these things that we were like trying to figure out slowly within the book over
Mhm.
the time of probably a couple of days, because again, timeline's very wishy
Yeah.
washy,
Mhm.
happens in like what feels like maybe an hour.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I was like, waking up to movement is so much faster.
Yeah.
Like he falls asleep several times
Yeah.
before he actually gets up in the book.
Hmm.
And in the movie, he like flops himself out of bed.
Yep.
The robot arms tell him his name.
Yep.
They say Dr.
Dr. Gray.
Rylan Grace.
Hmm.
So you don't get a lot of those flashbacks that you had before. And he does. He gets into the control room without and he's wandering around the ship within minutes and you're
Hmm.
like, "Wait a second. You know, we don't get that thin red line
No.
flashback or any of that." And I was like, I miss his thought process
Yeah.
because while he's like waking up, he's like, oh, maybe I'm sick. Maybe I'm in quarantine. Like, but then he thinks about his muscles and how they're not
Hmm.
wasted
Atrophied.
away, atrophied. And he's like, this is really weird. Like,
Hmm.
you don't get that. And I feel like they could have done a voiceover to kind of get
Hmm.
some of those thoughts while he was laying there. I feel like that is pretty common
Yeah.
in movie and film today, but
Yeah.
they chose not to do that and kind of
Yeah.
rush this. And I feel like this part really draws you in as a reader, like what's going on, like you're disoriented with him and
Mhm.
you're trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And so I kind of missed that. I didn't think it was the worst thing, but I
No.
did miss his thought process and like going through how we got here.
Yeah. I think they relied heavily on the comic relief of this scene.
A
Because
little bit, yeah.
he's fumbling around, like, at one point when he's still, like, kind of in the body bag, like, he fell off of he's doing, like, the worm movement, and the
Mhm.
arm grabs him to try to, like, drag him back in.
Mhm.
He's, doing this, like, marble mouth mumbling, like, there are definitely moments where, like,
Mhm.
even as the person that read the book then watched the movie, I was snickering at. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
well done. It's just that if I'm doing a hardcore comparison of the two,
Mhm.
I was missing out on a lot of the things that I really enjoyed. He even found his like crew members so much quicker as he was like climbing to
Mhm.
get to the control room. So it just felt like everything was much more fast paced. He even like there wasn't necessarily like an under area storage room. The storage room seemed to be somewhere else in the makeup of
Mhm.
this ship, which was also seemed to be a lot larger than what was portrayed in the book, at least to me.
Mhm.
Um, and he found like the crew personal packs. And we see him drinking all of the vodka that was in the bags
Mhm.
and kind of just like languishing in like the I don't know, like, I'm giving up phase, like,
Mhm.
I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah. And there is another room that doesn't exist in the book, the mental health space
Yes,
with
that
all the
ambiance room.
screens. And like he goes in there and you see like it can change like backgrounds and scenery and
Mhm.
stuff, which I think was interesting. He also asks to contact Earth after he sees outside, and there's the whole time where he's like experimenting and finds the gravity, and then he's like, "Okay, I'm in space," and he takes the time to realize, like, it takes him a while to realize he's not in our galaxy;
Yeah.
he's somewhere else.
Mhm.
But the computer straight up tells him it's 11 light years to
Yep.
transmit to Earth, so he's like, "Oh, I'm not in the Milky Way, I'm somewhere else."
Yeah.
And so I feel like that also, like, he did a lot of science to get
Yeah.
there, and so we're already missing his science brain.
Mhm.
And he's more of like, at this point, kind of like a little bit, feels a little bit kind of like a bumbling idiot. Like
Yeah.
he's dancing with a mop or a broom or something. And don't get me wrong, like I would be messed up too. And I feel like Ryan Gosling does a great job
Yeah.
with the emotion of it. Like there's a scene after he figures out like he's in space and that he's not in Earth's galaxy, where he like breaks down and like cries.
Mhm.
And I think he does a really good job at portraying the emotion there, but I feel like we're focused on that instead
Mhm.
of the science part of it.
Yeah. And then the first flashback that we get is kind of like a Mod Podge of multiple
Mhm.
flashbacks. If you pay very close attention, it starts with the newscast of the arc light and them seeing the moving uh, black dots.
Mhm.
And then it's immediately him going into the classroom where the kids are asking him, like, is something really eating the sun? And he explains the Petrova line to them and
Who Petrova
who
is.
Petrova is
Mhm.
and why it got named after her. And the kids lead more of the discussion in the movie flashback than he did. It seems like their parents have informed them a little bit more. At least a few of the
Mhm.
kids have, and some of the kids you can tell, like, which is very true to a classroom
Yeah.
setting, like every family is going to have decided what to tell their kids on a different level.
Mhm.
Um, and so the kids have a lot more information when he's explaining. She's the one little girl seems to be the leading
Yeah.
expert
Mhm.
in giving, like, well, it's gonna create an ice age and we're all gonna die and it's gonna be 30 years
Mhm.
and so, like, we just see it all kind of compiled, multiple of the flashbacks that we get between his scientific discoveries in the book, all compiled into one.
Yeah, that like that mix up, I get that they needed to condense some things, but I feel like they could have put him just like doing his experiments first and then the kids asking,
Mhm.
because if you've read the book, you know that the president doesn't announce these things until after he even coins the term astrophage.
Mhm.
And then that's when the kids start asking questions.
Yep.
And here, he hasn't coined that term yet and hasn't even been approached by Strat.
Mm-mm.
And so I think he doesn't go as far also with the consequences
Mhm.
with the kids at this point in the book or in the movie as he does in the book.
Yeah.
That flashback, like he talks about like how half the population will die and like all this stuff, and we questioned like, oh my gosh, are kids that age, should they
Yeah.
have been exposed to that? But here he doesn't quite do that, and I think they had to kind of pull back because you didn't have the information that you
Yeah.
needed at this point. It I think it works,
Yeah.
but I prefer the book.
Yeah. Um, the other little thing that I forgot to mention too that was interesting, small difference movie to book. In the book, Rylan doesn't have a personal pack. We see that he's got Dubois, and
Yes, yeah, I
in the
thought about
movie,
that too. Mhm.
it's his because it's pictures of him and it's notes from his kids in the classroom and all of
Mhm.
that. So that was, even though it's small, it feels major.
Yeah, actually, so when I sat down to watch it specifically to prep for this episode, my husband watched it with me for a second time and he pointed that out too.
Mhm.
He was like, "But in the book he doesn't even have a pack.
Mhm.
It's Dubois stuff." And I was like, "I know." And he's like, "You can very obviously tell in the movie that the pack wasn't packed by him, that like it was bare minimum and
Yep.
just like probably what he had where they were." And that would have been suspicious too to the crew had they, all survived and
Yeah.
opened everything up. Like, why do you have such scant things?
Mhm.
Which I think is interesting. Like, I guess you don't see that and now that I'm thinking about it, he did have his own suits.
Yeah.
He did have his own space. Even in the book,
Yes.
he had his own like it said Grace on them. They
Mhm.
didn't say Dubois, so that had to happen pretty quickly.
But I think that's probably pretty easy to do versus
Well,
getting personal items.
and it's Strat. So
Yeah, she probably had them sitting on the wayside.
or they just changed a patch. They just changed a patch.
That's true.
But it is like the small details. But it's I think in the movie you at this point assume that he volunteered.
Mhm.
Um, so it's not to throw you off.
Yeah.
It's to throw you off the scent of like, oh well, yeah, of course he's here. He has stuff.
Mhm.
But we also see um Strat approach
Yeah.
him, which is in the book. And
Mhm.
can I just say I love this actress
Yeah.
for her portrayal of Strat. She's
Yeah.
perfect for it. Her complete like at least for the most part like dead affect, just like I'm efficient, I'm going to get it done. And she approaches him like she does in the book, but they take him at the school.
Yeah.
And in the book he gets back to his apartment
Mhm.
before he is taken by
Yeah.
the agents,
And I
which
also feel like in the book, it was very much a kidnap situation, and in the movie, he's like, "Yeah, okay." He gets convinced. "Yeah, okay, I'll go with you." Like, it wasn't so, like, you don't have an option. It was just like, "Okay, yeah, sure, I'll go."
he does seem a little bit resistant, especially when she pulls out his paper and he's like, "I'm done. I
Yeah.
got shunned for that, blah blah blah." And he does have a little bit more curiosity in the movie, which I kind of appreciate. But we also get Carl.
I love the addition of Carl.
I do. I think that this is one of the changes in the book that I solidly agree with.
Yes.
That actor is hilarious, and their interactions I feel like really were good humor, and
Mhm.
they didn't make Grace in a way that didn't make Grace seem less smart,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of the other humor in the book kind of does, or
Mhm.
it not in the book in the movie kind of does. Um, but Carl being a constant character through the whole sequence where he is like doing his experiments
Mhm.
is great.
Yeah.
And he's just like he's so funny. Like when he, Grace is like, "Do we have an expense account?" And Carl's like, "No, but
But
I
I
do."
do.
Like it just it just brought joy.
Yeah. I feel like this is the one time where they stuck pretty decently well to what
Yeah.
happens in the book.
Mhm.
All of that experimenting, him being in the little box and him being, expendable. Um, I mean, he had a crowd watching him. That's the only real big difference besides just Strat being there.
Mhm.
But I thought that was great too. I thought that was a good little bit of humor too, because when he made discoveries, Strat's like, applause, everyone, applause. Like it
Mhm.
added to that. But I agree, Carl was the perfect addition,
Mhm.
because when they do the whole shopping trip and it's like this little like duo buddy system, throwing the
Mhm.
duct tape in and going bowling and just all those cute little like
Eating Twizzlers in
and the
line.
Skittles and yeah,
Mhm.
all of that was adorable. I absolutely loved it. And then when they run the experiment, the accidental breeding or
Mhm.
whatever, and he's like, "Are you sitting down?" He's like, "No." He goes, "We're fathers."
Mhm.
And then he goes, I'm
Oh.
sitting down now. Like I really enjoy that because it just adds like this tiny little like humanization
Yeah.
and extra little side that we see from the book, and this is their way of like putting that towards the characters here.
Mhm. The one thing like that I found a little bit unrealistic with the experiment part is that okay, he Grace loses them, right?
Yeah.
Oh shit, they ran off the slide. I don't know where they are. Carl gives him the answer,
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm not saying Carl isn't smart, but Carl isn't the scientist, and so for him to be like, "Well, put this box in a box," like that felt a little bit unrealistic. But like, other than that, it was. I understand the function of Carl. Carl is
Mhm.
also because they're not doing these internal voiceovers, and a
Yeah.
lot of the book is inside Ryland's head, and you're hearing his thought process. It's not like he's talking to himself. Carl is a convenient person for him to explain things
Yeah.
to so that the audience of the movie knows what's going on and why he's
Mhm.
doing things. So having this agent that's there that he has to explain things to so that he can get the funds or whatever
Yeah.
is makes sense to me. One thing, and I thought you would be more upset about this than me, is that he did not talk about how he named the
I
three
was about to bring it up.
stooges. He named the three particles after the three stooges until like he finds them. And he's like, "Oh, I have the three musketeers, the three stooges. Wait, there's a fourth." But in the book, he names them
Specifically.
specifically after the
Mhm.
three stooges. And we don't we don't get that in the
Mm-mm.
movie at all, which again is another personality thing. And I feel like it's so quick.
Yeah.
Like you could have just thrown that in there pretty easily. Like I don't understand the cutting of it, but um and then the breeding aspect of it, I feel
Mhm.
like needed more explanation. It was just like, oh, we did this. They went to Venus,
Mhm.
and then oh, there's four now. Don't get me wrong, that is the main. Those
Yeah.
are the main beats of the book. But I feel like, excuse me, there were a lot more there was a lot more in between,
Yeah.
of like, why would they do this and how did we create Venus? And again, maybe I'm getting a little too in the weeds, but he tried the light at first and then he
Mhm.
had to try something else. And it wasn't as easy as they made it
Yes.
seem.
Well, and I think too, like in general, so much of the science is actually taken out. Like so much of it.
Hmm.
We don't even see him coin the term astrophage in the
Yeah.
movie.
Hmm.
Like it's just like the kids know it even before he works on it for the first time with Strat.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, he doesn't even have to fight for his Three Stooges. She just already had left him there. So there's
Hmm.
definitely some things that they just graced over.
Pun intended.
Maybe.
um, so he figures out the breeding, and actually we get the aircraft carrier
Sure
sequence.
do.
We get him. and this is another great source of humor
Yes.
of him and all of these fighter jets and falling asleep and puking and all this stuff. But I think another thing that they cut that I didn't like that they cut is that the aircraft carrier he's on is a Chinese
Yeah.
aircraft carrier in the book. And I feel like that's important
Mhm.
because it shows how much the world is coming together
Yeah.
in order to do this, because they talk about how the pilot
Mhm.
like barely touches down. The Chinese people, like military on the aircraft carrier, are like mean mugging him. He's mean
Mhm.
mugging them. Grace gets out and this guy takes off because these are not,
Yeah.
they're enemies. They're
Yeah.
not friendly, but they are for this context. And we also have like the post-it note scene where he wakes up with a post-it note
Yep.
on his face, like, hand this to somebody and they'll take you to me. Like, we miss some of these things, which I think show what's going on Earth, or what was going on Earth. And I think missing that is a little, it takes away something a little bit
It takes
from the
away the
stakes.
yeah, this just how big the stakes are for what's
Mm-hmm.
happening. That's one of the things that I wrote down is that although we're seeing as many countries meeting on this aircraft carrier,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because when he does get into the room, you can
Yeah.
see all the different nationalities, whether they're sitting in the room or if they're on the screen behind, because,
Yeah.
that's there. But then so much of it is, again, quickly brushed over. She christens him into
Yeah, she like deputizes him and gives him a
it
clearance.
gives him the
Mm-hmm.
clearance, quickly explains, their plan for the Project Hail Mary, mentions that, they've got this Beetle plan, that it's a suicide mission. Like, she goes through it so quickly, explains Tau Ceti. We get the gist of the importance, but not the gravity of it, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think as a person that had not read the book, and I don't know because I've got the context for the book, right? Going into the movie. But when I went and saw the movie the first time with my husband, he didn't read the book beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
He went to just enjoy the movie with me because I was so excited
Yeah.
after having read the book. And he still really enjoyed it, but he even gave that feedback. He was like, I feel like there was some of the science and the trepidation of what was happening. I felt like some of it was missing. He goes, it was a really great movie, one of the best movies I've seen in a while,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt like something was missing. And I think that this part at the beginning is what is kind of missing for the viewers.
And I would agree with that. I feel like there's so much science put in, and we talked about that all through the last 3 episodes about how accessible
Yeah.
Andy Weir makes it. But they do. They come into this. He comes into this meeting, and she does jump on him and say he's figured out breeding. And we get the one, the Chinese
Hmm.
delegate who says we've replicated it, blah
Yeah.
blah blah, like in the book. But they already go to 2 million kilos, no
Yep.
context. She brings up probes. She doesn't call them beetles, and we get that without any
Yep.
context. There's just, here's a plan, whatever, and we don't. And then basically the flashback ends,
Yep.
and so you're not getting, and that takes a good while
Yeah.
for all of those components to come up to him. He
Hmm.
doesn't he That's like several chapters
Yeah.
for him to get all that information, and it just seems like everything is so readily available that
Hmm.
it just, I don't know. I could also see that being like information overload, and people being like, that I don't know that I got all of that,
Yeah.
and I just like need a beat.
So in other words, we're saying we need a happy medium.
Yeah.
When he comes out of the flashback in the movie, um, the Hail Mary is doing a countdown,
Yeah.
and he's freaking out because he's like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And this is where he hasn't spent enough time in the movie doing experiments and mathing. He's
Mhm.
done more of the drinking and wallowing, and
Mhm.
he still has his freak out over the zero G, but it's a freak out over the zero G in a different way. In the book, he was like trying to mentally prepare for it and still had the panic attack over it. And I feel
Mhm.
like in the movie, it was what's happening, what's happening, I don't understand.
Yeah, I wrote down he never talks about gravity. And that is one of the few things, one of the not few things, first things
Yes.
at the beginning that he does experiments on, because he's like climbing the ladder and his arm falls
Mhm.
in too quickly, and his brain still isn't fully functioning yet, because this is like, again, very close to when he woke up, and he's like, something has it like tickled my brain about that, but I don't know what it is. And that's when he realizes gravity is more intense than it
Yeah.
should be. And he starts doing all of these experiments and figures out that it's because of the velocity of the ship.
Mhm.
So then when the ship says that it's going to slow down or stop, he realizes, oh shit, that gravity is going to go away because I'll have zero velocity.
Yep.
And I was waiting, because one of the gross things is like he
Yep.
peeks into his shirt, or like into his outfit, and he doesn't do that in the book, which I
Or in
guess,
the movie.
or in the movie he does it in the book, not in the movie. And I guess like that leads to a whole shower scene, and we don't need that. But like he
But did we need that?
well, um, he doesn't even talk about gravity until the ship stops, and even after the ship stops, he doesn't talk about gravity.
Mm-mm.
And like you see him go into the control room and sit in the chair, and then it says pilot detected, and he's like, "Well, I'm not a pilot," and I'm like some of those things, like while that is gets you a laugh, like like I wish there would had been more, because again, it makes him seem more bumbling than
Yeah.
calculated, and Ryland in the book is very calculated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then we get the blip.
Yes.
He's like looking at the Petrova line.
Okay, hold on really quick before you get to that.
Mhm.
The one thing that annoyed me, and I know I'm saying like a lot of like criticisms and negativities, I did enjoy the movie.
Mhm.
I am saying that. But one thing that again I noticed in the movie is that the Hail Mary itself helps him quite a bit, because
Yes.
he
Mhm.
hadn't like dug through as many of the control screens to figure out that there was a Petrovoscope. It just
Mhm.
announces Petrovoscope ready because
Yeah.
it had shut
Mhm.
down.
Yeah. The ship has, in the book, the ship does not have an overall voice.
No.
It doesn't have a Friday or a Jarvis, but
Nope.
the movie ship does.
Yep.
And it communicates with him all the time, and he actually personifies it and calls her the Mary.
Mhm.
But he starts looking through this Petroboscope that it has announced that
Yep.
it's ready, and he sees a break in the line. Now, you do see him go, "Oh, you do have a Petrova line.
Mhm.
Why?" And then he sees this break, and then that break moves, and he sees a flash, which I
Mhm.
don't remember happening in the book. I know there was a spot there, but I don't remember a flash to see that it was moving until later.
Yeah, I think it was after.
And so then we get a picture of the blip A, which is a big change that they
Huge.
made. This blip A is wildly different than what's in the book.
Yes.
In the book, it's described as a bunch of flat panels, and he's like, that's really impractical for space travel. Like,
Mhm.
what is this? And in the movie, it's very spindly.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to my husband, was like, this reminds me of like something from Krypton, like with
Mhm.
all of the various shards, and it looks very different and not how I pictured it at
Mhm.
all. It is very visually like
Stunning. Yes.
captivating,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It just like, I think using the flat panels and
Mhm.
how impractical that is would really highlights how different
Yes.
the science of the two civilizations are.
Mhm.
Not just the science, but the materials they use and how they go about space travel. And while this is pretty, we don't really talk about the makeup of Rocky's ship at
Yeah.
all. It's
Yeah.
just kind of like, oh God, there's a ship.
I will say they got the size right.
Yeah, yeah, they did. Um, Another big difference for me that I was kind of upset about is that Rylan,
Yeah.
movie Rylan is scared.
Yep.
He
I
is
wrote that down
he
too.
is more scared than he is curious. He's like,
Yep.
"Oh my god, I'm trying to get away from this ship." But Book Rylan is enthralled. He
Yep.
is so curious. He wants to make contact. He would do anything. And don't get me wrong, he has his hesitations, as he should,
Yep.
but he only thinks about those for a second, and then he's like, oh my gosh, it's alien life.
Yeah.
And in the movie, he's
Yep.
scared out of his mind,
Yep.
and that's just not. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's also a rational response, but it's just not true to the
The character.
character.
Yeah, I wrote that down too, that he was more focused on trying to escape than he was in finding out if this was man made or if this was actually alien life, if there was intelligence behind the alien life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then his inquisitive side didn't come about until he realized, like, wait, it's following me. It's following me. Oh, it like slowly turned into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't necessarily love that. Um, I also thought, and I get it, comic relief, I will give that. But when the blip B comes across, he's like, oh my God, it's a bomb. And like didn't do anything to retrieve it, didn't have his inquisitive side
Mm-hmm.
until it like hit off the hull of his ship and realized like nothing was gonna happen. So then he tries the EVA suit to go after blip C because it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
repeat a blip B, it keeps
Mm-hmm.
adding letters. And here was another difference that I found interesting. He didn't know how to do the EVA. He reads through and is like
Mm-hmm.
learning through a manual.
Well, and the EVA suit is different.
Yes.
So in the book, it says it's basically like a chrysalis, and
Yeah.
there's a door in the back, and he goes into it. Where this seemed to have many parts,
Yeah.
and he had to like put it on like a suit and lock a helmet on, which was very different than what was
Yeah.
described in the book. Which I also think, again, this is the sciencey part that's missing.
Hmm.
Having the one piece suit that you just go into and lock yourself in basically fits the task
Yep.
better because there's less room for failure.
Yep.
If I don't get the helmet on just right, or if I forget like a sock, or whatever, something could go wrong. But if you just have one latch, that seems so much easier. And yeah, that kind of, again, I feel like that was comic relief, and
Yep.
we understand that, but it makes him look not as smart.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
he's trying to get it on and figure it out, and he's flipping around because it's zero G. And I was just like, again, I giggled.
Yep.
It's well
Sure
done.
did.
His
It's well done.
physical comedy is great, but it doesn't show actually how prepared he was
Yep.
to be on this mission. So
Yeah.
then you're thinking to yourself, I guess it does make you question even more, why the fuck is this guy on the
Yep.
ship? And if he doesn't know any of these things.
Yeah.
And I also, when he doesn't go for the first thing, I was like, he definitely went and caught the first blip.
Yes.
Like he was on it. And this time he just lets it bounce off. Like it tracks with who movie Rylan is
Yep.
because he's afraid, but book Rylan would have smacked movie Rylan. Like,
Yes.
what are you doing? This is first contact.
Yep.
Um,
And then when
yeah.
he does get the blip C, not blip B, blip
Mm-hmm.
C,
Mm-hmm.
and he's wanting to like figure it out or whatever, we get the next flashback, which again is very brief and it's very, like I said, very, very quick. And we basically find out that like Rylan came up with the centrifuge idea, not necessarily the other, like Strat and another scientist are talking about it and he's
Mm-hmm.
like eavesdropping and he's like, yeah, just a centrifuge. And I feel like he gets the credit in the movie, it feels that way, versus the other scientist.
Yeah, like
And she's
Strat.
not even named.
It's upsetting that the scientist isn't even named, but Strat. Well, and also I feel like in the book, you this scientist has put so much pressure that she got Strat to come to
Yep.
her, which throughout the book you can tell Strat does not do anything. She does not
No.
take orders, she gives them. And so the gravity of this woman getting
Yeah.
people to put enough pressure on Strat to show up is huge. And for her to start explaining it and then to have Rylan cut her off and say, "Oh, so you're talking about a centrifuge." And I don't like that. One, I don't like that. As a woman in STEM, like let the woman speak and let her get her plan out and talk about what she's
Hmm.
discovered and what she thinks and her solution. Not you step in and mansplain, okay? Sorry. If that bothers you, suck on a lemon. Um, but she is telling her about this, and then he steps in and says, "Oh, a centrifuge," and then it's like
Cuts, and then he just
he's
starts up the gravity on the ship.
so like, oh, sorry, that annoyed me. But also once he gets the blip C, he doesn't talk about the heat.
Nope.
He never talks about how hot it is, and then we don't get, which I guess maybe that was in the right sequence of the ammonia smell. He
Yeah.
doesn't get it until he opens
Opens it.
it.
Hmm.
But when he gets the first projectile from Rocky, he talks about how hot it is.
Hmm.
And oh my gosh, it shouldn't still be this hot because it just went through space, which is negative whatever degrees. And like,
Yeah.
holy crap, it must be really hot in there. And so we don't get that
Yeah.
context almost until like we meet way after we meet Rocky, which I think, I don't know, maybe you don't need it right away right there, but I felt like it was, I don't know. It was one of those things that I was like
Waiting
waiting for it
for.
cuz it should be a visceral reaction because of its temperature,
Yeah.
and we didn't get that. Um
One of the things that I liked in the movie here, when he does get it into the little enclosed,
mhm.
glovey thing, and he opens it up and he like pops it open.
Mhm.
I did appreciate this because reading it through the book, the description of
Model.
the model that the alien Rocky had made was hard for me as a reader to understand what it looked like.
Mm.
And then in the movie, Rylan pulls up a picture of the star system, and like you can see it like focusing between the model
Mhm.
and the computer screen, and he's like lining it up to figure out like what he's showing. I really enjoyed that
Yeah.
as a visual
Mhm.
comparison because that made it so much easier for me to realize his thought process and to see what was going on for
Mhm.
him then to make the little add-on to like here's earth and soul, like this is where
Mhm.
I'm from. I really liked that, because though we get the description of that in the book, I don't remember him doing a star chart comparison. He
Mhm.
just knew that. And so that was really clever, I think, as a visual for us as a viewer.
The model was exactly how I pictured it.
Yes.
But I agree. Like that was a really valuable like addition to put in, was showing how he got there,
Mhm.
and not him just like looking at the model and being like, I think this is this and I think
Yeah.
this is that. Like having it next to a star chart so people could understand what was going on. I agree. But then we see like he gets another blip, the
Yep.
blip D, and we see the model of the two ships with
Ships
the connector.
connecting.
And he's
Mhm.
like, oh, he wants to meet. And they attach.
Which is very different.
Yeah. And we see the tunnel,
Mhm.
which I don't know really how I pictured the tunnel. I'm not as much of a visual reader, if that makes sense. A lot of times I like absorb things and I have like an idea, but I don't have the movie in my head thing.
Mhm.
And so I don't know how I pictured it, but it wasn't that.
Yeah, I think I had like a dark cavey situation, but because it was described as so dark in the book and Rylan having to put lights in there, I didn't
Mhm.
really have a concept of what the walls really
Mm.
looked like. The only thing I had a concept of was the actual barrier between the two of them because it was described as having hexagon plates. That's the only thing that I really had a
Mhm.
description of in my brain, but the rest of it I didn't really have a solid image of.
One thing I did really enjoy, especially about the wall, the barrier, was that in my brain I didn't put enough detail in that I was like it's flat. But in the movie it is very textured, and
Yeah.
some of the hexagons stick out farther than the others, and it's obviously different colors,
Mhm.
different opacities. And I really liked how they did put that effect
Yeah.
in there. That was really cool. Um but so they're attached.
Yep.
Rylan goes in his EVA suit, with his lamps
Mhm.
and is trying to look around and gets like finally sees the at the bottom like the
Mhm.
opaque panel, and they do the whole thing
Yeah.
with the claws and him showing Rylan going back into the ship, and I think that was done really well.
Yeah. I think this is where things start going a little bit smoother
Mhm.
for me when it came to book movie adaptation parts. Is this whole meetup part, because it's the tapping and him seeing the pronged hand, the way they describe it, the way that it's portrayed, like all of
Mhm.
that. Um, one of the things that I thought was a very subtle nod that doesn't stick around too much, or maybe I just saw it because I think I saw it, but when he first walks in, like, he starts sweating inside the EVAC.
He does. Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, there's the heat. And
Mhm.
so I did appreciate that, and how very dark that it
Yeah.
was.
Mhm.
Um, but I was a little bit sad when he did like get to see him for the first time. Rocky didn't have his clothes.
Yeah.
I know that's silly, but I was like, I wanted to see what their conceptualization conceptualization of material and
Yeah.
clothes looked like.
Mhm. And we see so like he goes back into the ship, Rocky makes a new tunnel like he does in the book,
Yep.
and um Grace goes back in, and now the whole barrier is clear. And I really so one thing that they didn't um put in was that Rylan was so eager to meet with him, he breaks a piece of his hull off.
Yeah.
And like, so we don't, again, I guess because movie Rylan is scared and book Rylan is so overly curious, like he's willing to take all of these
Yeah.
risks. So that was kind of glossed over. But now we're attached with the second tunnel and we have the clear barrier. And another thing that they did was the copycat scene,
Yeah.
and I adored this. It
Mhm.
humanizes Rocky. It endears you to Rocky.
Yes.
And I've watched a lot of like side videos and behind the scenes about the puppeteer because they used a puppeteer for Rocky. Not everything, and you can
Yeah.
tell it's not always a puppet, but the puppeteer that they worked with for Rocky is phenomenal, and I feel like he brings so much to the character and
Mhm.
so much to the story. And I know Ryan Gosling himself has talked about how like he's a great scene partner
Yeah.
and how they worked together a lot to like build this chemistry between a puppet
Yeah.
who is an alien
Yeah.
and and Grace, the
Mhm.
character. So I love seeing Rocky's personality, even this glimpse at the beginning of him like doing the like
Yeah.
dance and stuff. I
Yeah.
felt like that brought a lot to the movie and was one of the other things that I really, really enjoyed for their
Yeah.
additions.
Yeah. I also loved the nod to Close Encounters in this scene, because when
Mhm.
Rylan taps to the music, bum 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 bum
Oh,
bum,
mhm.
it's the music that they use in that movie. But
Mm,
then Rylan realized, oh wait, you're not just tapping, you're pointing. Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Mhm. So they do things a little bit in reverse, which doesn't get to me that much.
No,
Because he tries to show Rocky measurement and does the tape measure thing before the clock.
and I love it.
And it's still just as cute
Yes, it
in
is.
the movie as it is in the book, with him getting wrapped in the tape measure and Rylan starting to figure out, like, maybe
Yeah.
this is not.
I'm gonna be honest, it was probably a little bit better in the movie than it was in the book, because it's so much more visual, like, how
Yeah.
many times he wrapped it around himself. I was dying.
I was too. And it's a great bit of humor
Yeah.
both in both mediums.
Mhm.
Um, so he very quickly, again, we're cutting out a lot of science. He very, very quickly realizes that Rocky does not see with
Mhm.
eyes.
Mhm.
He has echolocation, is what he uses as his main sensory input,
Yeah, and we
um,
get to see it as viewers.
which is really
Riz
cool.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed getting to see things through Rocky's perspective.
Mhm.
We get to kind of see how like it's black and then kind of gray
Yeah.
shifting around Grace. But he just kind of like figures it out.
Yeah.
There's no real explanation. And I feel like on the one hand, Grace doesn't make as many assumptions as he does in the book, where he's
Mhm.
like, oh, there has to be eyes because he knows how to wave or he can copy me. In the movie, he seems to move on pretty quickly, like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't see eyes, maybe it's something different.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like, I feel like in this context, that kind of makes Grace look a little smarter, or at least maybe not necessarily smarter, but like he's making less
Yeah.
assumptions, which I think leads to him like shows a little bit more of a scientific mind. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't just because, you know, humans have eyes doesn't mean that this particular entity needs them. And so he pretty quickly figures that out.
Yeah. Um, and here he names him Rocky just like he did in the
Yeah.
book,
Mhm.
and gives he goes, because you look like a rock. So we
Mhm.
get that finally, because I did miss all of his other naming things.
Yeah.
And then we do see them start. He's like, we've got to figure out how to come up with the language. And so we see all of
Mhm.
that. He duct tapes a phone to a laptop.
I don't think I paid attention to that.
I did.
Hmm.
Because at first I thought it was two laptops, and then later because he keeps on having to go back to the computer to like read it, um, I realized that it was a much smaller, like,
Hmm.
iPod phone or something like that versus two laptops. When he's putting the voice on there, and he goes
Oh
through,
my gosh.
I loved that, the different, like the sexy voice, the Meryl Streep voice, and
Mhm.
the I don't even know all the different voices until they landed on the right one. I really enjoyed that part of the movie.
It's so great. It's hilarious, a great addition, makes you giggle. Um, One of the behind the scenes thing I saw is um, that Ryan Gosling had made a comment about Meryl Streep being able to do anything, or like she's phenomenal, and
Yeah,
the producers and stuff had her do that without him knowing. And
that's
then when
great.
he played it, he he said she can do anything and giggled. The voice that they settle on is the puppeteer's voice,
Yes.
which I think is amazing. It fits perfectly,
Yeah.
and um out of all of them, it's the one I prefer the most.
Yeah.
But I love that they like have that moment and like go through the different um the different voices just to like get some humor out.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it shows some of their like friendship bonding too
Yeah.
in this too. Um, so they're building this language. He doesn't learn as much about Rocky, I feel, yet in this part where he had in the book.
He does ask about his crew though
Yes.
before he gets to the voices. It's
Yeah.
in the typing where he has to read the screen. And I feel like it's even sadder with the puppet.
Yeah.
Like seeing Rocky have like it's
Mhm.
described well and it's sad in the book, but like seeing him like his carapace like depress a little bit
Yeah.
and like talk about it really like made it all the sadder. And we
Yeah.
don't get to Grace's explanation yet. We just kind of hear that they're both the only one.
Yeah.
And then we get to the point where he finally tells Rocky he needs to sleep.
Mhm.
And he kind of like lays on the desk and he's like, "You die?" Like he's like very upset.
Yeah.
He's like, "No, sleep." And the way they set up the cot in this had
Yeah.
me claustrophobic as hell.
Yep.
In the book, he just kind of attaches it to the side because, again, in the book, they don't have gravity.
Gravity
And in the movie, both ships are connected and
and
spinning
spinning.
together,
Yeah.
which doesn't happen, but
Here we
they
are.
they needed gravity, I guess, for the movie. And so in the movie, he's like on this cot thing,
Yep.
but it looks like almost like Snow White's like
Yes.
casket thing with the glass over him so that Rocky can watch him. And
Rocky's just on top of him.
he's like, that's where you're gonna be. And he's like, not usually, closer on your chest. And he like gets on top
Yeah.
of the thing, and it's it's so funny. But I could not do that.
No,
I could not
no.
do that. Not in that like class. If I was in a sleeping bag attached to the side, sure, but
Yep.
not in that like glass coffin looking thing.
Yeah. And so we get a flashback here where we quickly meet the original Cruz when he's falling asleep, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we also get the scene with Dimitri, but he's not named as Dimitri, all in one. I know.
I'm so mad. Dimitri is one of my favorite characters. I told you guys that, and
Yep.
I mentioned that in one of the episodes.
I
He
think
is
two of the episodes.
probably two. He is a delight, and they skip over him so much. Like
Yep.
he's there, but he's not named. He very barely explains what a spin drive is, and they melt the ton of metal, just like they do in the book.
But not to show Rylan, to show the crew.
Mm-hmm,
And Rylan seems like he's been working on this with the scientist once
mm-hmm,
again, more involved than he was. Fine, I get it. You're trying to make his importance for the movie.
mm-hmm.
Um, but when we're here with this crew, it's also the time where they just casually mention how they want to die. It's not
And
even asked of them, they just bring it up in conversation.
after the first time they've met, and
Yep.
Yao is all wrong.
Yep.
Yao is a completely different person in the movie than he is in the
Yep.
book. In the book, he is all business. He's stoic. He is a leader. He's steady,
Yep.
right? And in the book, we see even during the space burial, which we didn't mention, but it pretty much goes how it
Yeah.
does in the book. We see him with funny faces in all of his pictures and stuff. And Rylan even points that out. He's like, you make a face in all of your pictures, and you deserved better than this. And like Yao seems very casual in the movie,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't fit. And then Ilyukna says she wants to die with heroin and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and he's like, I'll have what she's having. And it's like, no, like that is
Mm-hmm.
not how that went. And I feel like had they kept Yao the same, it would have had the same impact later when we find out about how Rylan actually got on the ship
Yep.
and how that Yao would have had a big problem. But
Yeah.
this is a totally different person.
Yeah. And Dubois doesn't even talk.
Not really. And we don't get the funny, awkward
Nope.
conversation where they talk about him and Shapiro having a sexual relationship. Like,
Nope.
if you're really banking on the humor,
That would have been
there's
great.
humor right there. And it got cut.
It did. But then we get the humor of Rocky just moving in all by himself.
Yes. So then we come back from this flashback where we've like met the crew and we see like they have and does Dubois even say nitrogen
Nope.
asphyxiation?
Not at all. He
I think
doesn't even speak.
he doesn't like so we don't even know why he has nitrogen on the ship, which is a big deal later on, right?
Yep.
But we come out of this and he hears a knock
Yep.
on his airlock door, and he goes and Rocky's in the ball.
Yep. He's just in the ball. He's moving around because, again, they already have gravity, which is
Mm-hmm.
a change. And now, don't get me wrong, I still love this part, right?
Oh yeah,
It's
dirty, dirty, dirty,
dirty.
dirty.
It's hysterical. He's running around in his little, hamster ball, and he wants to see all this stuff. And Rylan has to have it's almost like a conversation between you and your significant other. Like, we have boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and it's his. I mean, I loved it.
Oh
I
yeah.
was
Mm-hmm.
cracking up. It shows
Mm-hmm.
so much of the differences between their personalities and their relationship, but it was very, 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 very different from the way it all goes down in the book.
Yeah, they
You
don't have
know?
gravity, so he has to carry Rocky around, and Rocky's using the magnets. And it isn't until after Rocky fully moves in that they have gravity and he
Yeah.
can move around like that. And but it's so funny. And then we kind of see the what I'm calling the Grace Diaries, where he's like
Yes.
talking to a camera for recordings to send back to Earth, and he's like, "Personal space is at a premium." And Rocky is like on the other side of the ship. He's like, "Who are you talking to?" Question, and
Oh,
it's so
can you
funny.
hear this?
Yes, yes, it's so cute, and I love that those additions. They really show the relationship and how things are going, and it gets you a lot of good humor.
Yeah.
And I loved the addition of the recording
Yes.
because in the book he just says he sends information back
Yeah.
with the farms and stuff, but getting to see him like record messages, and you can imagine how those
Well, and
were
Rocky's
viewed
on
later.
the messages too, and I
Yeah.
love that because, like, he's there and he's, like, you know, showing him in those scenes that
Mhm.
we were just talking about. Um, I also love in this part where we're seeing, like, Ryland help build the,
Yeah.
different parts of the ship so that Rocky doesn't always have to be
The
in the
iridium like tubes they talk about in the
yeah,
thing, like
made out of
his
the xenonite.
yeah, his habitat is what I'm
Yes,
trying to say.
yeah. So I really did love that, that we got to see, that part of it. I feel like I'm the villain in the super movies.
Mhm. That was cute. Rocky does say one of his quotes though, and it's super, I feel like super early. The
Yes, it's right there
grumpy, angry, stupid, how long since last sleep? And that's way
when they're
early
yeah.
or in the movie than it is in the book.
Yes.
And so I noted that because I feel like that is a beloved quote by fans of the book, and it's just kind of tossed in there.
And if you're not listening
You
for it,
won't
you
hear
miss
it.
it.
Mhm. And then another change that they made that I did not, this is one I actually did not like, is then they talk about eating. And
Yeah.
Rocky is disgusted by how Rylan eats, and he shows off how he eats.
Yeah.
And Rylan is disgusted by how he eats. But in the book, he is very disturbed that
Yep.
Rylan wants to see him eat. And
Mhm.
so I think changing that
Mhm.
like kind of irked me a little bit. I was like, no, this is betraying Rocky's character and culture and everything.
Yeah.
Like he would not have volunteered that
Oh, I
to
agree.
Rylan at all.
I completely agree.
Um,
They also brush over the relativity and radiation talk in all of these. Like
mhm,
it's a voiceover montage part,
mhm.
which I get. It's heavy science, but also I would have liked a little bit more, especially on the radiation part,
Yes, I
so
agree.
that you would have understood a little bit more of what had happened to Rocky and his
Mhm.
crew.
Yeah.
Um, we also don't ever get told that Rocky had been by Tell for like almost 50 years.
Right. We barely even get an idea of an Iridian life span.
Yeah.
They kind of brush over that too. There's this scene kind of before we get there where they're in the like mental health space, the
Yes.
room with the screens that is
Yep.
only in the movie. And this is where we, I guess, kind of get that
Mhm.
idea of how long they live, because this is where Rocky talks about his mate,
Yep.
and he says, we've been together for, I forget how long, but like
Yeah.
decades. And Rylan's like, "Oh, that's a long time." And Rocky says, "Not long enough." And he asks Rylan, which I liked this little
Yeah.
addition, that he's like, "Yeah, I was with somebody, but things happened and now she's with Mark." And he goes, "Rocky hates
Hate
Mark."
Mark.
And I laughed at that.
Did you know that that was like an ad lib scene that they kept in?
Mhm. And that Mark, it was actually like a producer or somebody on the crew that was just off camera, and that's who Ryan Gosling like just picked a name of a guy that was in his eye line, and like they kept that in, and I
Yeah.
thought that was adorable. One thing I wrote down here that hasn't been talked about, and I had just realized while I was watching the movie it hadn't been talked about. They haven't talked about the coma resistance gene. They kind of gloss over when they're talking about how the mission's going to go that
Yeah.
they'll be in a coma, and Rylan kind of asks, is that like safe? And she's like, safer than them being awake.
Yeah.
And they don't talk about the coma resistance gene, which is another big thing in the book and a driving force into why he has to be the one on the ship.
Yeah.
And so I think not having that in there is a big problem
Yeah.
for me, or like a missing piece that really helps drive the plot. It's not just like, to me, it's not just a throwaway. It drives the story and really puts into perspective why they only have so many candidates,
Yeah.
and why he is basically forced into this because he has all the knowledge and he has the correct physiology to be
Mhm.
able to do this. So
Yeah.
I was kind of annoyed that they hadn't talked about it at all.
Yeah. I found that interesting that they relied more heavily on the fact that he knew about them, like the mission and the science aspect of it. But then we haven't seen him do a ton of
Yeah.
science yet.
I need a science expert that barely does any science.
Yeah. Um, this might be a hot take. I don't think this next flashback needs to even be in the movie.
I wrote down I don't like the addition of Strat singing. I
I
don't
didn't need the karaoke scene.
I did not. I think part of the point of Strat is that she's not to be humanized
Yes.
until she talks about her reasons for forcing Rylan.
Yep.
That is the most human she is.
Yep.
I don't think telling her that she needs to loosen up and all of that
Mm-hmm.
is necessary. And I don't like her singing. She does not participate in the crew that way. She very much floats above and
Yep.
gives the orders. And so I did not think, don't get me wrong, I think the other people, this is basically the scene where they're sitting and watching the pieces of the
The
ship go
launch.
up.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I feel like that would have been better. They could have
Yes.
still done it in the bar area that
Uh-huh.
they're in, but seeing the pieces of the ship and the prep going up and being like, oh, this is real, I think is better than them having like a last hurrah type of thing. But yeah, I agree. I did
Yeah.
not like.
I didn't need the karaoke scene for the parts about Strat. I get them showing it for giving us the hint
Yeah.
that Dubois
Mm-hmm.
and Shapiro were having a relationship, not even though you even knew their roles because it was brushed over. So you're like, okay, two of the crew members, like Ryland's making eyes and like, ooh. So you're seeing that that is something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, but we don't get the that awkward sex
Talk.
comedy relief scene that would have been really well done. And I don't feel like it was necessary. um Instead it was trying to show Ryland's, or the perception that other people have of Ryland's relationship with Strat.
Yeah, it did seem to feel like it was trying to allude to feelings between him and Strat.
Yes.
It could have also been about their perception, but I also think like they were trying to give the audience like maybe there's something there, there's some kind
Hmm.
of tension, and there's not.
Nope.
And I like it very much seems like when he's talking to her on the deck of the ship, like that he's kind of thinking that. And but in the book, they do accuse him of that
Yeah.
they're having some kind of relationship, but he is very shocked. Like so I thought that was not that just didn't track
Yeah.
well for me. And I don't think every movie, especially one that's mostly about a dude and a rocky alien, needs to have some type of romance in it.
Agreed. Agreed. So yeah, they could have kept this the original launch scene, and I would have been a happy
Mm-hmm.
camper. When we get back from this flashback, we're at Talseti E. We've
Mm-hmm.
traveled there. We still get the naming of Adrian, which is
Yeah.
nice. Um,
But we also, so during the scene or the montage where they're in the mental health room in the movie, he shows him Rocky. He
oh
like
yeah,
on the movie. So like having seeing that earlier and then them naming it Adrian after his, I think
yes,
actually added something too,
yeah,
like that I really enjoyed that's like, oh, he knows what Rocky is. Like Rocky knows what Rocky is,
yeah,
and so he gets why Grace is naming it Adrian, which I
yeah,
really liked.
yeah.
But we don't really, I feel like we don't get to see the magnitude of Rocky's engineering skills.
No,
And like Rocky's fixing everything and he like helps with um making his habitat, and he's making all of these, like he makes this like tank for the collector,
yeah,
like after they get the sample back, and how to make the
chain.
we're not quite there yet, but I mean, like he was help because they're just looking for something, and they're trying to do the Petrova line at this point. They
Yeah,
haven't gotten the idea of the predator yet, so he like helps create like a thing so that they can put whatever's left in that
Oh,
the
that
first
collector.
time. And so like I feel like we're skipping over a lot of how like resourceful
Yeah.
and smart Rocky is about building things. We also don't get his math.
Mm-mm.
Rylan just starts talking about things in like 29,000 seconds and things like that. We don't see how fast Rocky is at math. And that kind of bothers me. Even though we are going to get more engineering as the movie goes on, I feel
Yeah.
like we don't get the magnitude that we do in the book.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I do enjoy their banter back and forth when they do get the sample from Adrian when he's out there, which was slightly different when they're out there because he went out for the entire thing versus just the retrieval. He like
Mm-hmm.
opens up both slides and he's got like
Mm-hmm.
from and to blah blah blah. I really did love like he's like, okay, it's a success. Like their back and forth talk about it. And um Rocky's like body language when he
Mm-hmm.
gets all excited when
Mm-hmm.
Rylan had looked at the slide and he was like, "Oh my gosh,
There's life.
there's life, there's a predator." And then Rocky starts, "Life is what? Life is answer,
Life is reason.
life
Life
is
is
reason."
reason.
And he's like
Mm-hmm.
fumbling and falling all over the
Mm-hmm.
place. I thought that was adorable and so well
Mm-hmm.
done.
I loved that part. One thing I really loved even before that was their visualization of the Petrova line.
Yeah,
When he's outside and sitting there and you see like the
gorgeous.
red and all the sparkles and like it's just visually stunning. Also him sitting out there and looking at Adrian
Yeah.
because Rocky's like, "You've been out long time.
Yes.
Everything okay basically?" And he's like, "I'm just admiring it."
I'm having a moment.
And like those are both visually stunning,
Yeah.
and like they did so well with that and getting to see, because we talk about the Petrova line, it's like, oh yeah, like in the book it's whatever, but getting to see him in the middle of that was really
Yeah.
cool. um and then we see Rocky and how excited he is, and I loved Rocky talking to the camera, to Earth,
Yes.
and he's like, "What do you think, Earth?" Or like he says
Yeah.
something to try to get it, and Ryland's like, we're just sending recordings. Like this isn't, you're not actually talking to
Talking to
anyone."
them. And that's when he finds out that, it's the suicide mission and
Mhm.
we see him offer up the astrophage for the
Mhm.
fuel and that was very heartfelt. And
Mhm.
how he teaches a hug.
Yeah. Well, and we see earlier that Ryland makes the active choice to
Yes.
not tell Rocky
Mhm.
that he's not going home. He's like, "I don't want to bring him
Yeah.
down." And here he finally says that, and he's like, "I've made peace." What does make peace?
Yeah.
And then I think Ryan Gosling does a really great job at portraying the
Mhm.
emotion of now finally like realizing he might go home
Yeah.
and that he might not have to die out here. And that really, like, I feel like is the core of this movie, is really
Mm.
the emotional
Yeah.
part of it. Science is there, but it's mostly about the emotional connection and like the humanity and all of that. And I feel like this point is like the culmination of
Yeah.
it, where he's like, Rocky's like, "Crew die, Rocky can't fix. You say you will die.
Rocky
Rocky can
convince.
fix."
Mhm.
So, like that is such a beautiful scene, and I
Yeah.
thought they did it really well. And then
They do have to give it comic relief though,
mhm,
because he's like, "How do you know when a hug is done?" Question.
you just feel it, and I love that. I love how he presses his carapace up against the thing, and
Yeah.
it's so heartfelt, and I loved that.
Yeah.
But here's where we get to where Rocky has created this
Yes.
collector. They're talking about a plan, and this plan is very much, I feel like, breezed over in the movie, but and more discussed in the book, which we expect at this
Yeah.
point, right? But they're like, okay, we have to get in there at a very specific angle, and I
Yep.
have this collector, and then that's when Rocky's making the chain, and we actually get a little bit more comedy of Grace um practice flying,
Yes.
and Rocky's like, not good,
Nope.
and
Bad,
that's
bad, bad.
that's so funny. But so we see him go out, and we see the chain go down, and
Yep.
him collect the um the atmosphere, like the sample
Yeah.
from where we think the breeding is.
Yeah.
And the problems start even earlier in the movie than they do in the book. He does say, "Oh, the atmosphere is kind of on fire." But in the book, he kind of ignores that at first. He
Yeah.
thinks the astrophage are going to protect them. It's fine. And he seems a little bit more concerned in the movie than
Yeah.
he did in the book. And he goes out there and it's like already he's hooked up the winch
Yep.
and the thing is coming up, and in the book he very much is paying attention to that because
Mhm.
he knows at a certain point he has to stop it.
And he has to speed it up and then he has to stop it.
And in the movie he it hits, and that is not something that happens.
No.
And so like problems even start there.
Yeah.
And I get it, it's to build the
It's to
tension,
build the
right?
tension. Yeah.
He gets the sample, and then the in the book, that's when he's walking back, and that's when the hull breaches, like
Yeah.
lurches the first time.
Yeah.
But he's still trying to collect the sampler when Rocky starts saying there's something wrong.
Wrong. Yeah. Um, Another part of it that wasn't in the book, unless I'm misremembering, and I just reread it, so I shouldn't be. But he like almost loses the collector. He gets knocked
Yes.
out.
Hmm. I did write
Rocky
that
gets
down
all
too.
worried. Um, and so like he has to go on this whole escapade while the ship is very much on fire and everything's going
Hmm.
down. Like Rocky can't fix any of it, so we're in this like high tension, like he's got to get it back. He doesn't leave the collector in the airlock. When he gets back, he actually buckles it into one of the chairs. um, we do see them kind of escaping, well, thinking that they're escaping
Hmm.
orbit, but not really, because then they're realizing that gravity
Gravity.
is still happening. We get to see the visualization of the astrophage like leaking out. I think they did a really great job of showing just how dire it was, him trying to get
Hmm.
rid of the fuel bays, not being able to eject the other one. Rocky making the decision to come out of his environment to go save Ryland was even more like
Yeah.
heartbreaking than
Yeah.
in the book, because like his little sounds, because it's not being translated for us anymore, because
Hmm.
Ryland's losing consciousness. Seeing the smoke, that gray smoke coming off of his body as the
Hmm.
oxygen's hitting him. um, and then Ryland gets burned, not from carrying Rocky, but from Rocky carrying Ryland to the
Yeah.
hospital bay. That was a twist
Hmm.
in this scene. The silence that happens, though,
Hmm.
before Rocky like starts dragging him, like as I mean, like there's just so much that was well done for the intensity
Hmm.
of this scene.
Yeah.
I thought was very well thought out, very well
Hmm.
put, for it just to make the tension.
Yeah, I wrote down watching Rocky struggle is hard.
Yeah.
So watching him in his environment, like watching Grace
Yes.
get hurt is like he's like trying to wake him up, trying to make noises, skittering around, and then he finally comes out. And I I don't I didn't like that they had Rocky drag race.
Yeah.
I felt like there was balance in the book, and that
Mhm.
Rocky sacrificed himself
Yep.
to save Grace, and then Grace did the same for Rocky.
Yeah.
And those burns affect how his character acts
Yep.
for like almost the rest of the book.
Yeah.
So I felt, and him trying to figure out how to help Rocky.
Yeah.
So in the movie, Rocky drags him back, and he wakes up in the medical bay, and
Yeah.
he tracks a trail
Yep.
to find Rocky back in his own airlock.
Mhm.
So Rocky got himself back into his own environment, and he basically just waits for him to
Yep.
wake up. And I liked it better that they saved each other
Yeah.
out of the bad situation.
Mhm.
Um, and like, I don't know. I feel like it proves the bond is going two ways and really like solidifies them as close.
Yeah.
And Rocky knowing, saying, save Earth, save Arid
Mhm.
before he loses consciousness shows he's willing to sacrifice for Ryland. Um, I don't know. I wish they had kept it,
Yeah.
but not that it's not well done. It is very well done, and I think it works. I just feel like you lose something having read the book. Now, if you haven't read the book, I don't think you would miss it. I
Yeah.
don't think it would matter as much, but I don't know. It just shows how much they care for each other and how they're both important.
Yeah.
Because you can tell that Rocky wants to save Rylan because he thinks Rylan is more important for saving the
Mhm.
planets than he is,
Yeah.
and Rylan, you know, like cherishes Rocky too, so he does the same. And how much work he has to put in to save him, making the harness and dragging him and trying, everything. Like I missed that
Yeah.
effort.
Yeah. I miss the effort too. I do still feel their bond and
Mhm.
everything. I think that's still in there because, when Rylan finds him in there, he's like, "I'll watch you sleep, but you've got to wake up."
Mhm.
You feel his emotion and whatnot towards him. Um, he gives him a heat lamp because he's like, "I don't know what else to do for you." So there's
Mhm.
there's small nods to it, but again, not quite enough.
Well, and we don't get the air thing that Rocky then explains was actually hurting
Yeah.
him. Like, see, and to me, that would have been a bumbling mistake
Yes.
that would have been better than some of these other ones,
Yeah.
like, to include.
Yeah. Um, so while Rocky is recovering, a lot happens. A lot
Yes.
happens.
Mhm.
Um, Ryland is able to collect and experiment on what they got from Rocky's collector. They
Oh,
didn't need um like a special thing because he was able to access it in his own stuff.
well,
They had already made breeder tanks.
the other thing that they missed before you get too deep
Yeah.
is that because he's in this like drug induced and there's so many things going on, they don't have in there that he jeopardizes the sample. They
Oh, yeah.
don't have in there before we get to like the experimentation, like he left it out
Yeah.
and they weren't even sure that it would survive in the environment in the ship. And so he like after he's like up from the burns and everything, he's like, "Oh shit, I never even secured the sample before he even does all of
Yeah.
this." Is like, "Oh my gosh, everything in there could be dead."
Yeah. Yeah, and
Mhm.
they don't address that.
Exactly. Back to
Um
what you're saying.
but we saw like the glove contraption like NICU thing earlier, and
Mhm.
that's what he basically kind of uses to be able to do his experiments with.
Mhm.
Rocky, without us being told until now, had made all these different breeder tanks that are in these, individual spaces. We see him find out that, Telmeba exists, that he can make more Telmeba. He makes the nitrogen discovery all while Rocky's sleeping. Um, they and then he starts making the nitrogen resistant Telmeba, explains
Mhm.
the differences that they need. Like all of it is just boom, 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 boom.
And he doesn't even talk about like why they, like you said, they don't, why they need nitrogen resistant ones, and we don't even really, he doesn't explain that, Venus and three world and
Yep.
that their environments are different, and so we hit Venus first and then we get, it's like very much focused on, even though this is the main problem of the story,
Yeah.
it's very much focused on the fact that he's upset that Rocky hasn't
Yeah.
woken up yet. And we miss all of these discoveries. And one of the favorite things in like the second half of the book for me is when they hit Talmeba
Yes.
35 and Rocky is the one that's like, "No, we have to
To
celebrate
celebrate.
this." And we don't even get a glimpse of that. By the time Rocky wakes up, they already have what they need.
Yep. Yeah. And when, like you said, Rocky wakes up, he puts himself out into his little Spaceball, and they hug, they reunite, and we have a party celebration in the ambiance room.
And one thing I did enjoy was that we get to see Rocky's
Yes.
ceremonial dress.
Yes.
And the other thing, though, so you just see Rocky in his ceremonial dress, and you're like, wait a second. The last time I checked, we were still by Adrian. And so they
Yep.
don't even really talk about that they're back with the
Yep.
Blip. They're hooked back up to the Blip.
Yep.
In the book, they do tell you that there are additional tunnels going to the Blip so that he can go back and forth. And most of the time, Ryland doesn't even know what ship Rocky's on.
Yep.
And so then we just see them in the ambiance room, and they're celebrating. And he puts the little party hat on top of Rocky's ball, and we see Rocky's, outfit, and he kind of explains it. And Rocky, book Rocky requests a laptop.
Yes.
And movie Grace just gives him
one.
a laptop. And they have a really cute moment that I actually really loved. I do kind of love the party and the way that they did it. But, Rocky's like, well, what can I give you? And Grace says, you've given me everything. And, you tear up at that moment, and you love, the connection there. But the one change that I thought was really another one that was unnecessary is that he goes in Rocky's ship. And that is a point of contention for him in the book, is that he really wants to go into it and he can't.
It's brought up like 4 times that he can't, that he'll never see it because the environment, and I don't know. I just thought it was unnecessary and super clunky, and I didn't like it.
I agree. I did not like it, and I feel like we didn't see enough of Rocky's engineering skills to make the suit that he made for Rylan believable.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that book Rocky could have done that? Yes, because I have seen him make things that are incredibly intricate. But we don't. We also didn't talk about how they got stuck at Adrian.
Nope.
We did see him jettison fuel.
Yep.
But then, it gets into the rest of the fuel lines. We didn't see the ship shut down. We didn't see all of those complicating
We didn't
factors.
see him have to scrub out all of the Talmiba
poop.
Nope. None of it.
We didn't see any of that. It's just kind of gone. And I feel like seeing at least some of that would have better informed the complications later.
Yeah.
And so, like, that I feel like is also missing.
I think not having the great Talmiba escape happen at this point is maybe my biggest fault with the movie. Overall, like, the other things I can give, the other things, although I've said, yeah, I wish there had been more science, or, oh, I wish this had been the same as the book. All of those things I can honestly forgive because it still makes the movie work. I think this is the one major plot hole of the movie, because when we get to where it matters, I feel it really makes for a lacking experience.
I agree. It is. I don't like that it's glossed over. There's a lot in this section of the book that is glossed over.
Yeah.
They also, so they leave.
Yep.
Which their goodbye scene.
Oh wait, hold on before we get there. Before we get to the goodbye scene, because we see a flashback where Rylan, before that, because he's in the ship or whatever, and so we get the flashback where Rylan is forced to become part of the crew, right? And we see that scene where Strat gives her reasoning as to like why you're the tertiary and everything. In the book, half the population was going to die in 19 years. In the movie, only a quarter of the population is going to die in 30 years. I wrote that down because I found that was interesting, and that the way that they were going to gloss this over was that they were just going to put him in a coma early, and his amnesia part isn't explained at all
Mhm.
It's just a side effect of the coma, not the drugs
Mhm.
that Strat was going to give. So he doesn't get this information until after all of the success.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about the flashback of the blowing up of the,
Yeah.
like, him and Strat are actually much closer to the
Yes.
explosion in the movie than they are in the book. And the same things go down. They talk about how they had too much astrophage and things like that. But they're in this conference room talking about it, and there are way more people there
Yep.
than in the book, when she tells him that basically he's the option.
Yep.
Again, we're missing the Jean explanation.
Yep.
She says, "Well, you've been here the whole time," which happens in the book. Um, and he's like, "I'm not an astronaut." He specifically says, "I haven't done any of the pool things. I haven't done any of the training. I put the not an astronaut." And
Yeah.
again, he is so much more prepared in the book, and it seems more realistic for
Yes.
him to need to go and to
Yeah.
be the choice than it is in the movie. And again, his glasses are hanging off of his face, and I feel like they really make him seem dopey to some
Yeah.
degree. And he's very resistant, like he is in the book, but she has a stronger argument in the book than she does in the movie. "Well, you've been here. Why did I keep a middle school teacher
Yeah.
around? Blah blah blah." But I don't know. I did not like that. And Carl is there.
Yes.
Also, there's a team of people that come to take him away, and he escapes.
Yeah. He's running all over the facility.
And she has to call it in, and Carl is standing over him when he gets drugged.
Yep.
I also didn't like that they didn't explain that he was given an additional drug, like you said,
Mm.
to give him the amnesia,
Yep.
because that it was a big part of it. He would have had amnesia, and the other two wouldn't, had they
Yep.
all survived. So I think telling him and forcing him were very
Yes.
different.
Yes.
I I don't think, I'm trying to remember, because the movie, I have better memories of the book than I do of the movie. I don't think she calls him a coward. I
Yeah,
think
I think she does.
I don't remember her calling him that specifically, but I feel like that hit him harder in the
Yeah.
book than it does in the movie. And I don't know, it just, I feel like they could have done it better.
Yes. I feel like overall in the movie, they make him seem more cowardly from the start. From
That's
the
true.
moment we meet him all the way through, his demeanor is just very
Hmm.
different than Book Ryland.
So maybe that is more, like, congruous then, that he is scared in the beginning, and because he is meant to be portrayed as cowardly for where he gets forced into it at the end. So maybe that is a better thing than I thought. But I think that discredits his science brain
I do
and
too.
how curious he is. And yeah, I just
Yeah,
think that there's a mismatch there that I wish they could have done better
I agree.
to stay truer to the character and his personality.
I agree. And that's where we get their goodbye scene though, which was
Yes.
oh, oh,
Oh, when they do the copycats again,
yeah.
and you bawl your eyes out. You're like, "Oh my god!" Even though you know what's going to happen,
Yes.
if you've read the book, I guess. If you haven't, I probably would have lost it even
Even more.
worse. But it's like, oh well, but they also don't put that scene in there where, like, he's like, "Oh well, maybe we can see each other again,"
Yeah.
and then you kind of get that idea of how much longer the Iridians live than humans.
Yeah. Then we get where I find the biggest plot hole in the movie. Rylan is alone on his voyage home. He's getting the Beatles ready. He's kind of doing his own thing. He falls asleep. And then all of a sudden he's woken up because the Hail Mary has red lights going, contaminant detected, contaminant detected.
Hmm.
And some quick experiments are shown. And he's just discovering that the Tell Me But are loose.
Yeah, they totally skip again how he figures out how the Taumiba are
Yep.
getting out. So as we have seen in the book, he suspects that the breeder tanks are leaking. He does a whole bunch of experiments for that. He expects the mini farms
Yep.
for the beetles, which we haven't discussed at all,
Nope.
are leaking. And he has to do a bunch of experiments to realize that they're actually permeating. If it's not leaking, but they're permeating
Yep.
through in between the molecules of xenonite.
Yep.
And it happens like this,
Yep.
like that he figures it out. You don't see any of the science, you don't see any of the struggle, or like how dumbfounded he is that this has happened
Yeah.
yet again. And but you do get to see him being like, oh my god, Rocky's ship
Ship.
is completely made of, he can't fix this.
Nope.
There's no way he can fix it. And so you see that dilemma a little bit of
Yeah.
him like, do I go home? Do I go and save Rocky? It doesn't take him long,
No.
but you see him send off the beetles, and that's where you get that they're beetles, because you actually get to see the little name tags on
Yeah.
them. And he launches them and then goes to find Rocky, which we don't get a lot of. We don't get that he plotted Rocky's trajectory.
No.
So
That he'd been watching the
I
Flash.
think you see him watch The Flash once or maybe twice, like before, like right at the beginning, and then
I
he does
didn't
the
catch it.
sleeping and stuff. But he just all of a sudden is there. He doesn't like do all of the things he has to do to find him. I think you do see a little bit where he bounces the light off of him and then he finds him. Um, but it goes really fast, and the reconnection um is different in that the tunnel's still there
Yes.
in the movie,
Yep.
and in the book it's not. He has to
Mm-mm.
bang on the side of the hull with a wrench because there's no other way.
Yeah.
And then they communicate using his EVA
Radio.
radio, and that's not
Yeah.
how it is in the book, which I wish they would have done that,
Yeah.
because I think Rocky speaking to him is more impactful than their visual interplay.
I agree. One of the things that I thought was, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I thought it was cinematic enough when he launches the Beatles,
Mm-hmm.
the four of them. It's like the famous Abbey Road crossing.
Oh, I did not notice that,
I did.
but that's cool.
I thought it was cool. But yes, he gets there. He saves Rocky, and it's not like you said, it's not through the radio. So like Rocky can't be like, the Talmiba are loose, and him being like, yeah, I know. Like that whole interaction doesn't really happen.
Well, and like one thing I teared up both times reading it was like, Grace, you're here.
Yeah.
Like you came back for me. I'm
Yeah.
tearing up about it just talking about it. Like he is so like he can't believe it. And then there's the moment where he realizes that Grace is doing this and
Yes.
will die.
Die.
And he vows to him, you will not die. I won't let it happen. And Grace is like, I only have so much food. And
Yeah.
we know, I did tests. I cannot eat your food.
And they come up with the Talmiba plan.
and they come up with the Talmiba plan. But like you don't see that like heartfelt reaction that you get from the
Yeah.
language of them talking to each other. And I really missed that there.
Yeah.
I
I did
wish
too.
they could have had, because at this point we know that Grace understands his sounds,
Yeah.
and we know he could hear through that barrier before somewhat.
Yes.
It was muffled, but he could hear it. So I think they could have realistically done it.
Yes.
And I don't like that they didn't do it.
Yeah. We see a small change here, which I'm okay with. Strat watching his video journals back.
I liked this. I liked that we got to see a little glimpse of what happened on Earth. I
Yeah.
think at the end of the last episode, we both talked about that the only thing you kind of get is Rocky
Yeah.
saying that Soul returned to pre-Talmiba, or not Talmiba, Astrophage Luminance.
Yeah.
And so I liked this.
Yeah. I liked this part because this is before they get and use the Talmiba, so they haven't solved the problem yet. Strat's listening to his video journals. She looks older. She's still out on the ocean. Everything's frozen over, so you can see the effects that the astrophage has had. And then she gets on her little radio and she says, "Let's begin." And you see all of these, you know, like doors open,
Mhm.
and they're rolling in his Talmiba farms. So you're like, okay, she's back at it. You know that she is going to be able to use what he's found, what he and Rocky have found, to be able to put into action. So
Mhm.
I really did enjoy that. And he even sent
That's what I was gonna
the
say.
little
Mhm.
Ryland model that
Figurine. Mhm.
that Rocky had made for the Xenonite, out of the Xenonite, and everything. So I liked that little
Yeah.
twist that we
Mhm.
get to see that
I
before
did.
we see Ryland on Arid in his little dome. Not little, quite large.
Yeah, it seems pretty big. He has Armando,
Armando,
the arm in his house with him. I'm sad we didn't get me burgers.
I
I
know.
think I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm grossed out by it,
Yes,
but like
very.
still kind of sad because it shows the lengths at which the Iridians went to make sure that they kept him alive.
Yeah.
And also another thing is that Grace isn't old enough.
Nope.
He is not old enough in the epilogue. In the epilogue in the book, he is walking with a cane. He
Hmm.
says, I think bodily, I'm about 55 or so,
Yeah.
like in his mid 50s. If we go from my Earth birth date, I should be in my 70s.
70s.
So he's like walking with a cane. His body is obviously breaking down because of the environment he's on,
Yeah.
but also messed up because of the whole relativity thing.
Yep.
And so I kind of missed that, but I'm glad we get to see him and Rocky
Yeah.
interact. And Rocky is in his environment in a suit.
Versus having like the outside dome area.
Yeah, and like Rocky diving into the water is so cute. And
Yes.
they have the conversation that they have. Not
Yeah.
I don't think Rocky tells him about Soul,
No, I think
but
it's sooner. I think the reason why we're not seeing him being older is because I think it's
yeah,
like when they not first get there, because he does have an environment and he's not ill from not having the right, nutrients from food. But I think it's earlier
yeah.
along the
Hmm.
timeline than what the last chapter gives us in the book.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the discrepancy comes from. But they do still have the conversation about like,
Mhm.
hey, our Iridian scientists, they're ready to send the hail, like we've got the fuel for you, we can send the Hail Mary back. And Ryland's like, well, can I have time to think about it? And
Mhm.
Rocky's like, yeah, take all the time you need.
He's like, yeah, you think long time. Like,
Yeah.
that's it's such a cute interaction. And he talks about how the dome, like, thank the scientists, the dome's
Yeah.
working, and the can we talk about the water temperature and things like that.
I love the little nod that Adrian's actually the one that works
Yeah.
on the water temperature. I
Hmm.
was like, "Aw."
I did enjoy that, and like bringing that in a little bit. I enjoyed him be like interacting with the kids
Yes.
and like seeing their little bodies and moving around and how they're doing. I kind of miss that he doesn't have an organ.
Me too.
I
The
wished
little
they had.
talkie whatever.
Yeah, he has a laptop that basically seems like it makes the noises. But I liked that he had an organ in the book.
Yeah.
But I think the little Iridians are the cutest thing, and I like that we got to see an epilogue for both Earth and
Yes.
him on Arid. I
Yeah.
think that added a little something extra that I wanted from the book that I didn't get.
Yeah. Yeah. So overall, I'm still gonna say the book was better.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to question that.
Never.
But as far as book to movie adaptations go, I wrote down specifically great adaptation. Honestly,
Yeah.
it does leave out. This is a lengthy book. It does leave out a lot of things that I wish there was more science to help
Mhm.
you understand what was going on and really get the stakes
Yeah.
and who how scientific Ryland is.
Mhm.
But I feel like the main focus of this movie is the human relationship
Yeah.
and the connection between him and Rocky and the cooperation needed to
Mhm.
solve the problem and like sacrificing for one another because they both sacrifice for each other
Yes.
repeatedly
Yes.
in both the book and the movie, and I think
Yeah.
they portrayed that really well.
Yeah. I think they hit the nail on the head when it came to Rylan and Rocky's
Oh yeah.
relationship. They
Mhm.
did a great job with the comedy and the relationship, the heartfeltness, like that was perfect. I
Mhm.
do wish that the science part had been a little bit more well explained. I wish the great Telmeba escape had
Yeah.
been in there because it makes the ending feel too rushed and too easy.
Yeah.
Um, and I think for me, I wish we would have seen more true character of Rylan from the book
Yeah.
versus his cowardly kind of outlook. Watching the movie back and seeing it the second time around to take note for this episode for it, I think that was one of the things that was a little lacking for me. I love his humor. I love
Mhm.
his teacher aspect. I love that he's back on Era doing what he loves. But I wish we would have seen a little bit more of his compassion and his brain, because
Mhm.
I feel like they relied a little bit too much
Yeah.
on the flimsy side of him, because although that is a small portion of him, we clearly see that the more resilient side of him is the bravery and his smarts.
I also miss the stakes, and like we didn't even talk about, like, they didn't talk about how they were going to breed them, like taking over
Mhm.
the Sahara Desert
Oh
or
yeah.
going to the prison to get the guy who makes the black
They don't talk about
panels.
the climatologist at all.
They don't talk
Forgot about
about
that.
like blowing off pieces of it. Antarctica, they don't show Strat's power and how, like, they bring her into the courtroom and
Yep.
she just hands two pieces of paper and she's out from under everything. Like, they don't really show the gravity of the situation on Earth in that way, and
Yeah.
I miss that, because I think it feels like it would feel even more satisfying to see that little snippet of
Yeah.
Strat in the middle of a frozen ocean if we saw how dire things were and how well people were coordinating, and all the things that they had to do to keep Earth to, like, survive to that point.
Yeah.
I do kind of wish that was in there. But I really did enjoy the movie, and
I
I
did.
would recommend it to people.
Oh, yes, 100%.
Even people who aren't super sciency.
Mhm.
I'm like, this is a buddy comedy movie
Yeah.
basically, where they're on a mission to save the world.
Mhm.
And that from that aspect, and I think you kind of needed that to promote to a wider audience,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, we're trying to make a movie, movies make money, and you want to be able to be accessible to the general public and
Yeah.
want people to want to see that. And so I think from that angle, this was super successful.
Yeah, I agree because, like I said, the first time that I saw this movie, I had read the book, my husband had not, and we both came out of it very much enjoying the movie.
Mhm.
Second time watching it, although I was trying to be more critical of it
Yeah.
because I was doing it for this episode, I still really loved it and
Yeah.
thought when it came to a book adaptation for something that is so beloved, I think they did a decent job with it. So, would I
Mhm.
recommend it to people that have read the book? Absolutely. Would I say go watch this even if you're not interested in reading the book beforehand? Yes.
So, what did you guys think of the movie if you've watched it? If you haven't, go ahead and watch it and let us know what you think. Would you recommend the movie? Would you recommend the book? How did you overall feel about how they did for this book to movie adaptation? Where does it rank on your list?
And that's it for us with Project Hail Mary. The next time you catch us, we will be giving you a couple of fun little quick episodes, a quarter two update to let you guys know how we're doing with those reading goals that we've got. And then because it's summertime, going through some books that we've enjoyed for the summer or that we're hoping to read as well. So we'll catch you then.